For so many people, that whole idea of working for yourself, it just conjures up these images of endless hustling.
Right, just constantly scraping by. The fear that you're one missed project, one missed paycheck away from disaster.
Exactly. It's often painted as this frantic scramble for scraps of work.
A race to the bottom.
Yeah.
But what if that whole narrative is just fundamentally wrong, at least for a really crucial segment of the population?
The segment that isn't just surviving, but is absolutely thriving.
We're looking at the solo worker who's not struggling. In fact, they're building incredible wealth.
And that's our mission for this deep dive. What if being a solo worker is actually the fastest path to financial freedom? We are pulling apart the strategies, the systems, and, frankly, the radical mindset shifts that are documented in Elaine Poffelt's research into the $1 Million One-Person Business.
And this is so important because it offers a clear, actionable roadmap. It shows how literally tens of thousands of entrepreneurs are hitting 7 figures in revenue.
And we have to be clear on that. This is revenue, not just profit. Massive top-line numbers.
Massive revenue, and they're doing it without the enormous overhead, without the management complexity, and all the stress that comes with hiring and managing a traditional staff.
The sheer scale of this trend is what makes it so fascinating. I mean, this isn't just a handful of, Silicon Valley outliers.
No, not at all. This is a fundamental structural shift in how businesses are being built across the country.
So let's look at the data just to grasp the magnitude here.
Okay, get this. Out of over 28 million small businesses in the U.S., a staggering 23 million are classified by the IRS as non-employers.
23 million.
Which means they're run solely by the owner. No full-time W-2 employees on the books.
That number by itself is huge, but here's where it gets really interesting, especially when you look at that elite tier. Poffelt's research found that in 2015 alone, there were 35,584 of these non-employer firms that generated between $1 million and $2.49 million annually.
Let's think about that for a second. Over 35,000 people running $1 million enterprise, completely on their own.
And it's not a static number. That's the other key.
The growth rate is significant. That number, the 35,584, that's a 33% increase from just 4 years prior in 2011.
So this segment of the economy is growing way faster than traditional small businesses. It shows this powerful pull towards the ultra-lean model.
And the ceiling just keeps going up.
It does. The data proves the structure works for massive scale. You have this elite tier of 2,090 solo firms generating between 2.5 and almost 5 million in revenue.
And then the superstar level.
The absolute superstars. 355 solo firms managed to generate $5 million or more. This is proof that a one-person business isn't a side hustle. It can be a multi-million-dollar revenue-generating structure.
So that brings us to the core question we have to answer. How do they do it? How do you achieve this radical scale without staff? The old business model says you need to hire legions of employees to grow.
More payroll, more management, more office space.
Exactly. But the answer for these solo powerhouses lies almost entirely in a triad of technology, automation, and a very deliberate, ultra-lean decision to outsource or just eliminate everything that doesn't directly generate revenue.
Okay, let's unpack this, because the only reason this massive shift is even possible now, compared to, say, 20 years ago, is the technology explosion.
Oh, absolutely.
What used to cost thousands of dollars and needed a whole IT team can now be done instantly with a cheap subscription.
It's a capability explosion. I mean, starting a business used to be this monumental effort.
Legal fees, buying physical servers.
Finding office space. Now, that technical barrier to entry has it's evaporated. Legal formation, for example, you can do that in less than an hour online.
Through services like LegalZoom or whatever for a few $100.
And website platforms are truly plug and play now. You can get a robust, secure, mobile-ready e-commerce site up on Shopify or WordPress for next to nothing.
That capability alone to handle inventory, process payments, have a professional front end, that was a 6-figure investment a generation ago.
And here's the critical part. The solo founder doesn't have to be a genius at everything.
Right.
If you need high-end branding, you go to a marketplace like 99 Designs. If you need specific technical help, coding, copywriting.
You go to Upwork or Freelancer and you hire an expert for one specific project.
Exactly. It's a huge shift in how you acquire talent. You buy skills only when you need them.
Project by project. You're not carrying the expense and the regulatory burden of a full-time salary, benefits, all of that.
The cost efficiency is just staggering when you look at infrastructure. Cloud storage from Amazon or Google. That eliminated the need for expensive localized servers. That was a massive capital barrier.
And for reaching customers, I mean, Forget expensive newspaper ads.
Low-cost digital ads on Facebook or Google let you target with surgical precision. You're not just hoping someone relevant sees it.
And the money part. The logistics of actually getting paid have been solved globally.
Easy processing of credit cards or bank transfers from anywhere in the world is Jest. It's a built-in function in most software now. It's instantaneous and secure.
This whole reliance on technology and flexible talent, it leads right to what Pofelt calls the ultra-lean philosophy.
And it's a choice. It's a deliberate, strategic choice to avoid the overhead, the administration, and just the sheer complexity of managing people.
And we see that choice reflected in the data. Intuit tracks small business size, and the average U.S. small business shrank from 6.5 employees in 2001 to just 4 in 2014.
Entrepreneurs are voting with their feet. They're actively choosing to reduce or eliminate headcount because technology provides a better alternative.
And they replace employees with contractors they see as partners, people who are motivated to grow their own businesses.
Dan Mezeritsky, who runs Fitness on the Go, is a perfect case study. His business generated $5.5 million in system-wide revenue, and they run ultra-lean.
What's amazing there is the financial stability it creates. The corporate headquarters kept $1.5 million of that revenue,
Which resulted in a 30% profit margin.
a 30% profit margin. In the traditional business world, that often requires immense scale and constant cost cutting. Here, the ultra-lean structure just inherently creates that high margin.
So, okay, that sounds great, but, the critics will argue that relying on contractors is just transferring risk onto the worker. How does the research address that?
Well, for this high-performing group, the model works because they're paying a premium for expertise and reliability. These aren't low-wage gig workers.
They're specialized service providers.
Exactly. And for the solo powerhouse themselves, the primary motivation is explicitly freedom and independence. MBO Partners found 75% of independent workers cited being their own boss as the key reason.
And that freedom isn't coming at the cost of income for this group.
Not at all. High income is incredibly common. 43% of independent workers report earning more than in their traditional jobs.
And get this, 3.2 million independent workers in the U.S. earn over $100,000 a year.
So for many, going solo isn't a risk to their income, it's an accelerator. They capture the full value of what they produce.
All right, so let's move from the why to the how. What's the actual blueprint these successful founders are using?
We can look at Laszlo Nadler. He runs Tools for Wisdom, a company selling these high-end specialized planners. He was bringing in over $2 million in annual revenue, and he started with no formal business background at all.
His journey is great because it really illustrates the 4 critical components that allow a solo operation to scale up.
And the first one is something we call embrace geekdom, or the passion principle.
You just can't sustain the effort it takes to hit 7 figures unless the business is built around something you are obsessively interested in.
Totally. If you don't truly love thinking about your product every single day, the motivation just won't be there when you hit the inevitable roadblocks.
Nadler wasn't just selling generic planners. He had this almost obsessive fascination with productivity. He developed his own unique method focused on units of attention, not just hours.
And that intense personal interest drove the innovation that made his product unique.
Okay, so what's the second principle? Because this is where a lot of people get stuck.
This is the hardest psychological barrier for so many entrepreneurs. You have to ditch the DIY mentality.
You need to do everything yourself.
Exactly. Early on, the solo owner wears every hat. Nadler, for example, initially tried to save money by printing all his planners at home.
And he quickly realized his office, with 12 or 14 laser printers running constantly, had turned into a one-person sweatshop factory.
He was drowning in packaging and toner. He was spending all his time on low-value, repetitive physical labor, which capped his ability to earn money no matter how hard he worked.
Left to the trap.
So he embraced this mantra. You need a team to achieve your dream. If your dream doesn't have a team, it's not big enough. He outsourced all the production to an online printer.
Which gave him almost unlimited scalability.
Instantly. He removed the low-value activity, the printing and assembly, to focus 80% of his time on the high-value activity, which was design and marketing.
Okay, third principle.
Simplify sales and fulfillment. This is pure strategic leverage. Nadler realized that selling on a major internet marketplace like Amazon was the most efficient path.
Why? Because he could use their fulfillment service.
Exactly. For a simple $49 a month fee, the platform handled all inventory storage, packaging, and shipping. That single decision automated his entire logistics operation.
So he went from spending hours at the post office to just shipping in bulk to a fulfillment center.
Which bought him back massive amounts of personal time and scaled his physical product business overnight.
And the fourth and final component.
You have to nurture community and reviews. When you rely on high-volume online sales, social proof is everything.
So he used tools like Facebook Audience Insights to refine his marketing copy, realizing his customers were mostly middle-aged women, not the young professionals he'd imagined.
And here's the critical financial insight. He dedicates 80% of his time to growth, and for him, growth means ensuring every customer is happy. Why?
The one-star review.
The one-star review. Online, a single bad review can have a disproportionate, devastating impact on your sales.
So customer service isn't just a cost center. It's a high-leverage growth function. The quality of service directly translates to reputation, which directly translates to revenue.
So if we connect this to the bigger picture, Nadler's approach is being applied successfully across 6 main business categories that are just ripe for solo founders.
And these strategies all circle back that central concept of achieving scale without having to hire staff. Let's break down how it works in each of these 6 areas.
We can start with Category A, e-commerce. This is the most accessible, thanks to the tech we already talked about. But the key here, according to experts like David Fairley, is finding a narrow, specialized niche.
You have to avoid what he calls ruthless price competition. You do that by becoming a curator, an expert in a really specific area.
He's seen massive solo success in niches, from specialized origami materials to gumballs to highly engineered masks for sleeping.
The smaller the niche, the less competition you have from the big retailers.
And this requires listening to the market, not just your own ideas. Look at Soxy.com. They started out selling a whole range of men's clothing.
But then they studied their sales data, and they had this epiphany. The majority of orders included their funny original socks, and the margins were way better.
So that realization forced them to pivot. They dropped the whole menswear store idea and focused entirely on original and daring socks.
And that decision was driven purely by the data. They found that men were looking for a subtle, low-risk way to show some personality at work, and bold socks were perfect.
Next up, Category B, manufacturing. This sounds like the opposite of a solo business, right? You imagine huge factories and staff.
But the successful solo path here relies entirely on outsourcing. You become the designer and the strategist, and you hand off the heavy lifting of production to what are called co-packers.
Rebecca Cronis and Luisa Valos of Tropical Trader Specialty Foods, they sell organic honey and bring in over $1 million a year.
And they are absolutely not running bottling plants. They use a co-packer, an external facility, for all their packaging. This allows them to meet rigorous food certification standards and handle quality control, all with incredibly low internal overhead.
And that lean structure gives them critical flexibility. When a severe drought in Brazil cut their inventory supply and revenues dipped, their low fixed costs let them weather the storm.
A competitor saddled with huge payrolls and factory leases would have been in real trouble.
Okay, next is Category C, informational content creation. This is all about selling your unique expertise packaged digitally.
Ebooks, courses, premium newsletters. The scalability here is almost limitless because the product is intangible. Replication costs are zero.
So Orwell of Examine.com is a great example. He built a 7-figure income, but he's not a nutritional expert himself.
Right. He scaled by hiring expert contractors, MDs, researchers, to synthesize all this complex nutritional research. He then sells that curated information in ebooks and a 30-month newsletter.
He's basically scaling the intellectual capital of others. He's the curator and editor, not the original expert.
Then you have a different but equally effective model with Nick Shaw of Renaissance Periodization. He started with intensive one-on-one coaching, but his hours were capped.
A hard limit on his income.
So to scale, he shifted from selling his time to selling his methodology. He developed customizable, pre-designed diet templates for about $100 a plan.
He productized his knowledge. He moved from trading time for money to selling a scalable asset.
Then we have Category D, professional services. This one's notoriously tough to scale because your time is the main asset.
So the only real path to $1 million here is not working more hours, but achieving a massive price premium and packaging your services into high-value engagements.
So you have to be strategic with pricing, know the market rates, often through trade organizations, and you have to demonstrate value that goes way beyond just the dollar amount.
For instance, if you're a speech coach, your high price isn't for an hour of your time. It's because your coaching gets clients better speaking gigs. That's a massive non-monetary value.
And you have to be disciplined about getting paid. Deposits up front, weekly invoicing. Cash flow strain is the Achilles heel of most solo service businesses.
Category E is personal services, and this is about monetizing your methodology. You scale the unique system you create, not your own labor.
Joey Healy of Joey Healy Eyebrow Studio is a perfect example. He moved from traveling to clients to charging a premium $115 per session in his own studio.
But his real breakthrough was generating passive income by negotiating a profit-sharing agreement to train stylists at a major spa chain in his unique method.
He sold the standardized knowledge and got a recurring revenue cut. He became the creator of the system, not the person doing the labor.
And let's circle back to Dan Mizaritsky's Fitness on the Go. After employees kept poaching his clients, he switched to a franchise licensing model with contractors.
But the key that unlocked the scale was his technology platform. He invested a reported $250,000 over time into custom software that automated everything: management, billing, education for his 180-plus trainers.
That investment let him become a system architect. He grew the revenue with a tiny corporate staff because he bought automation to replace administrative employees.
Finally, Category F real estate investment, often called getting rich slowly. But the solo million-dollar earners have applied the ultra-lean model here too.
Corey Binsfield built a portfolio of 116 units in Duluth, Minnesota, generating over $1 million in annual income.
And his strategies are super tactical. First, he used the 1% rule,
Which means the monthly rental income has to be at least 1% of the property's purchase price. A simple rule that forces discipline and ensures positive cash flow.
Second, he invested locally. All his properties were within 1.5 miles of his home or work. This eliminated travel time and let him do quick inspections.
But crucially, he outsourced heavily. Property management, maintenance, repairs, all handled by external vendors.
And that's what let him scale to 116 units without hiring his own staff. His time commitment is incredibly low, about 1 hour per month for every 10 units he owns.
Okay, so building $1 million business obviously requires smart funding. For the learner looking for practical steps, let's break down the 4 common routes these entrepreneurs used.
Route 1 is the most common and probably the safest: the side hustle and savings. A lot of these founders start while they're still employed.
Using their paycheck or a spouse's income for stability, Kelly Lester, who founded Easy Lunchboxes, used her husband's acting income to fund the startup.
Route 2 is what we'll call living lean. This requires massive financial discipline.
And the psychological fortitude to separate your business and personal finances. Paul Hedrick, who started the boot company Tecovas, saved 20–30% of his salary for over a year to build a reserve.
And that's key. Steve King of Emergent Research stresses that successful independents treat their businesses like real businesses from day one, with budgets, goals, and a plan.
You're not just draining the company account for personal expenses. You maintain the discipline of a salary.
Route 3 is attracting capital. This is for when you need big inventory or rapid expansion. Hedrick from Tecovas proved his concept first, hitting 6 figures in sales.
And then he sought outside help, eventually raising over $1.8 million from angel investors. That initial traction de-risked the investment for them.
Similarly, Dalton Dale needed a lot of upfront capital for his haunted attraction. He cold contacts in the theater business investors who understood his niche and raised $1 million.
And Route 4 involves crowdfunding and digital testing. This is about validating demand before you go all in. Brooklinen needed to prove people wanted their high-quality, mid-priced bedding.
So they raised $236,000 on Kickstarter. That validated the demand and gave them the capital to place their first big manufacturing orders.
We also see the power of rapid, minimal investment testing. Justin Goff used cheap Facebook ads, starting at just $100 a day, to quickly test his ebook idea.
Once he saw he was turning a profit on the ads, he scaled aggressively, and that ebook went on to do over $1 million in annual revenue.
All right, moving on to managing time and focus. The strategic solo owner isn't working more. They're working smarter, with just ruthless efficiency.
Laszlo Nadler uses a framework we should all probably adopt. It's the EADP framework. Eliminate, automate, delegate, procrastinate.
It's all about constantly identifying and removing low-value tasks. He shared this trick for eliminating email noise. He uses a filter to automatically archive any email with the word unsubscribe in it.
And that reduced his daily inbox noise by 70%.
If you can eliminate a distraction, you don't have to manage it.
And they lean so heavily on automation tools. Schedule Ones for appointments, Globify for international calls, Streak for Gmail to track if leads are opening your emails.
It's all about eliminating the low-leverage manual follow-up time so you can focus on engaged prospects.
Okay, let's talk about the money you keep. tax optimization, and financial health.
Right, because it doesn't matter what you earn if you don't keep it. Jonathan Johnson, whose business grew to $2.8 million, stressed the importance of legal structure.
He transitioned from an LLC to an S-corp.
And that move resulted in significant tax savings. The reason an S-corp is so powerful for a solo founder is that it lets you split your compensation.
Right. You have a reasonable salary, which is subject to payroll taxes.
And then you have distributions, which are only subject to income tax. By keeping the salary reasonable and taking the rest as a distribution, you significantly cut your overall tax burden.
And then there's the issue of reserves. Financial stability is vital. Research found that 55% of micro-business owners can only cover 1 month of expenses with their savings.
And 30% have no business savings at all.
So maintaining cash reserves, even if it slows your initial growth, is essential for stability. It future-proofs you against the unexpected, like that drought that hit the honey supply.
To build those reserves, you need fast cash flow. So high earners use tools like Apple Pay or Square. But there's a huge caveat here for the learner.
The processing fees.
Processing fees. You have to meticulously calculate them against your profit margins. If your margin is 2%, but the processor charges a 2.5% fee.
You're losing money on every sale.
Exactly. You've wiped out your profit. So you have to be smart about when and how you use these tools.
This all speaks to a larger mindset. The solo powerhouse views their company not as this static thing, but as a perpetual business, as a lab.
They're constantly seeking improvements. Every setback is a data point that requires research and adaptation.
Matt Friel of Game Deal Daily is a perfect example. He was driving 10 or 12 hours a day sourcing inventory, and then he nearly burned out packing thousands of orders himself during the holidays.
He realized that model was completely unsustainable unless he wanted to live in your car.
So his solution was to research options. He found fulfillment services online, and crucially, he hired an external firm to handle the menial task of labeling and packaging his inventory before it even got to the fulfillment center.
By outsourcing that low-value physical labor, he reclaimed his time and his mental energy for high-leverage activities, like strategic sourcing and marketing.
And that continuous learning extends to marketing. Laszlo Nadler doesn't just look at other planners. He actually analyzes successful infomercial scripts.
He noted their reliance on selective text and a formula of 5 key bullet points, 2 of which should always be questions to grab attention.
And then he customized that proven format for his own online product descriptions. He's looking outside his industry for best practices.
Another great example is Alan Walton of Spy Guy. He saw that the manual logistics of shipping were eating his time, so he quickly hired Shipping Easy to automate his order processing.
He had to free his time for the activities that drive exponential growth product selection, marketing, not printing postage.
And sometimes the barrier to scale is purely psychological. It requires expert coaching to break through those self-imposed limits.
Catherine Krug of Betterback hired a coach to help her avoid getting stuck in the day-to-day administrative chaos.
The coach helped her stay in what she calls expansion-contraction mode.
Which basically means the coach forces you to spend dedicated time on high-leverage growth activities, that's the expansion, and then ruthlessly prune or eliminate low-return administrative tasks. That's the contraction.
The coach is an accountability partner against the owner's own tendency to get bogged down.
Jason Weisenthal of Wall Monkeys struggled with procrastination. He hired a coach who was a successful colleague who just helped him focus on finishing high-leverage projects.
But the ultimate coaching story comes from Adam Bornstein of Born Fitness. He hired Noah Kagan, who helped him realize that his own ego was preventing him from scaling.
Bornstein believed that customers needed him as the coach. Kagan helped him see that what customers really valued was the methodology and the coaching system, not necessarily Adam's personal time.
And that realization was the turning point. He shifted from working one-on-one to hiring and training a team of 5 employees to deliver his fitness system.
That move from solo practitioner to system architect is what finally allowed him to get over the $1 million mark.
A critical advantage of this whole path and why so many people chase it is that it gives you the freedom to define your own vision aligned with lifestyle.
You're not beholden to corporate growth narratives or shareholder demands.
Catherine Krug of Betterback decided against traditional employees because she personally found management and bureaucracy frustrating.
So she consciously structured her entire business around contractors so she could maintain a mobile lifestyle.
And that let her work from anywhere. Miami, Tokyo, Sundance. For her, flexibility and reduced stress were more valuable than just maximizing headcount.
We also see this fascinating thing, the deliberate anti-growth model. Choosing profit and quality of life over maximal scale.
Jason Gaignard of Mastermind Talks runs an exclusive event that costs $10,000 to attend. He gets thousands of applications for only 150 spots.
And every advisor tells him to scale it up to 500 or 1,000 attendees, but he intentionally limits the size.
Why? Because he learned a hard lesson in a previous business. When he scaled revenue from $1.5 million to $3 million, his profits barely grew because he had to almost double his staff and get a bigger office.
The growth led to bloat, more administration, and very little extra profit. With Mastermind Talks, he settled on $1.7 million in revenue with a 40% profit margin. He prioritizes the quality of the experience over just chasing a bigger top-line number.
Once you hit this high income level, you need a different kind of financial discipline. Let's bring in Ric Edelman's crucial financial foresight here.
Solo entrepreneurs are natural risk takers. They concentrate all their time and resources into their one business.
And Edelman warns them to avoid applying that same entrepreneurial concentration to their investments. They have to consciously counteract that risk-taking nature and maintain a highly diversified long-term portfolio outside of the business.
Don't invest your business profits in more high-risk ventures just because your own business was a risk that paid off.
He also has a really sobering and essential lesson on pricing.
Oh, this is so important.
He says many young entrepreneurs make the fundamental mistake of undercutting competitors because they think their low overhead justifies a cheaper price.
Yeah, but they fail to calculate the full cost of the lost traditional benefits into their pricing.
Edelman points out that only about 60% of traditional compensation is salary. The other 40% is paid time off, retirement contributions, health care, all those company-paid benefits.
So if a solo entrepreneur doesn't calculate that missing 40% into their pricing, they can't succeed in the long term. You have to price yourself as if you are compensating yourself for everything a traditional company would provide.
And so we've completed our deep dive into this million-dollar solo revolution. We've covered the operational systems, the product innovation, and the financial discipline required to get there.
We've seen that the path to 7 figures as a solo founder, it's not magic. It's a calculated execution of a very specific blueprint.
Ditching low-value tasks, strategically leveraging technology, finding your niche, and just relentlessly managing your systems and your cash flow.
And here's the final perspective we want to leave you with: the learner. The highest value of building a $1 million one-person business isn't actually the dollar amount itself.
It's the options that high-income stream creates.
In an economy where corporate stability is fleeting, where entire careers are threatened by automation, and corporate loyalty is, well, non-existent.
Controlling your own high-income stream means you are future-proofing your career in the most powerful way possible.
You are the sole decision maker. You are forever liberated from waiting for an external guardian, a boss, a corporation, a government program, to give you permission to live the life that you want.
You are engineering your own freedom, your own stability.
That profound shift from the employee mindset to the system architect mindset, that is the key to this new economy.
If you have the knowledge and the discipline, the path to a high-income, ultra-efficient business is wide open.